Well, hi everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. It is a Thursday, the 13th of December, which is 11 days to Christmas Eve and 12 days to Christmas Day. And I am just going to tell you right off the bat, because we're going to talk about the prospects for a white Christmas in the Northeast. Let me just say right off the bat, the one thing you should not be doing right now is looking at the surface maps of the GFS going out into the long range. And I'm saying that regardless of whether you've got a run that shows snow for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day or not. This is that's not the place where you really want to look. Where we want to look is the upper air. And we're going to get a flavor of what the upper air is going to look like going through next week and through next weekend. Okay, this weekend is gloom and doom with rain and everything else that's going on. But we're going to look at next weekend, and we're going to look into Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. It's inside the somewhat unreasonable, but not completely unreasonable, long-range period. And I'm going to tell you that I think, looking at what's going on, that I think there are chances here that are going to be on the table for some areas in the northern Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. How it plays out, I'm not sure yet, but I think there's enough there that there's the possibility, and we'll talk about that. And I'll just leave it from the standpoint, if we had this big upper ridge in the east, and if that were to look like that were going to be the semi-permanent pattern for the rest of the month, or at least through Christmas, I would say, yeah, let's just throw the whole idea away. But the wintertime, one of the things my experience has told me over the years with the wintertime is that you can get surprises. And sometimes those surprises don't really show up until you get inside 84 or even 72 hours, and sometimes not even inside till 48 hours. That even happened a couple of times last winter. So I think the overall upper air pattern, if I had to pick an upper air pattern that could produce a white Christmas for somebody, this might be one of the possibilities. So we'll get to that in a second. In the meantime, let me just give a quick welcome at this point to all of those of you who are on my weather app, which is available for Android, and it's absolutely free. For those of you who might be interested in that, we'll put the link up on the chat board at some point a little later on. Otherwise, you can find it on my website, or you can certainly find it on my Facebook page. And it's a free app if you're in New York, northern New Jersey, New York City, Long Island, the Hudson Valley, southern Connecticut. That is pretty much my concentration there as far as the local weather is concerned. I think this app will work for you. And for those of you who have the app already, let me just tell you, there should be an update coming, and the iPhone version should be coming very soon. We've just been doing a lot of work on that all this week, and dealing with Google and Apple is really kind of like filling out a form for the federal government. It just takes time. Okay? Welcome to my Patreon members. Those are the folks that are on my subscription platform. We'll have some more information on that a bit later on. And we are going to get going here as far as our weather is concerned tonight. Quick hellos to S&S Storm Chase and Forecast Team, folks watching from South Central Pennsylvania, North Central Maryland, and nearby. We have flood watches up for parts of that area. Flood watches up from Maryland southward because we are dealing with this next weather system for later Friday night, and into the weekend. Some places it may be for much of the weekend. The further north you go, but the rainfall amounts will be on the order of a couple of inches. And as you go to the inland, away from the coastal areas, you've got a melting snow issue. Either the snow has melted or is still in the process of melting as it thins out. The ground is absolutely soaked with water, so it's got no place to go. So throw another couple of inches of rain on it, and you've got a problem. The folks from Angry Ben's weather page, Angry Ben's Angry Weather, and from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Stormwatch, and from my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome aboard tonight. So this is what it looks like as far as the watches are concerned. We've got flood watches up from South Carolina, from the coastal counties of South Carolina, in the it's always tough to try that. That's like the northeastern corner, and just about all of North Carolina, particularly as you go north and west of Raleigh-Durham, where you got all this melting snow to deal with, on the order of a foot plus. Once you go west and north of, say, Greensboro, and well north and west of Charlotte, you got a lot of melting snow there. Also throughout Virginia, this large area, a lot of this area that you see in the flood watch got a foot plus as well. Then, of course, the snow cuts off once you go north of Charlottesville, Lynchburg, and so on. But the rest of the area, it's going to be a matter of rain. Back through Texas right now, we've got a small area of winter weather advisories in the central part of the state. We also have a lot of high wind. We have wind advisories and high wind warnings that are up because of this low that's pulling out. And we've got also various advisories and wind advisories and warnings up going up to California, with some flood watches up in the Pacific Northwest. Still 4-county square in Michigan with winter weather advisories there. Otherwise, the nuisance weather system that moved through my neck of the woods today really didn't do very much, and no one's got advisories up, but we do have various special weather statements with respect to icy conditions that might develop in some places. The other issue with this storm is the severe weather threat that is ongoing. No severe thunderstorm watches up right now, but we do have a marginal risk of severe weather indicated for Northeast Texas and also for the Gulf Coast, from the looks like from the Alabama-Mississippi line into the Florida Panhandle. We're seeing a marginal risk of severe weather for this particular region. The other thing I want to look to with respect to rainfall is the WPCs, the Weather Prediction Center's rainfall forecast for the next 7 days, and much of this is front-end loaded. So we're talking, when I say front-end loaded, it comes during the early part of the forecast period of that 7-day period, which would be now through Sunday, and not necessarily, there's not really very much in the latter part of the forecast period, which would be Monday through Thursday. But you can see the rainfall amounts of 1.5 inches or higher, reaching up to about New York City. And then you get down into Virginia, North Carolina, you start to get into these 2-3 inch plus amounts. And for the Florida Panhandle and parts of southwest Georgia, we've got some 3, 4, 5 inch amounts being indicated. Same for coastal North Carolina. This is all going to be thunderstorm driven, what you see off the North Carolina coast, and also along the North Carolina coast and down through the Florida Panhandle. We're getting some heavy rains at the moment, running through parts from eastern Oklahoma northwestward into southern Missouri, southern Illinois, and Indiana. So that reflects what you see there, that little bullseye of 3 inches plus. And then in the west, particularly north of San Francisco, you start to get into some really substantial rainfall amounts going up the coast, and it blossoms out in Washington State, where we're looking at some areas with 10 inches plus over the next 7 days, because we've got this large amorphous trough off the west coast and into the west coast, sending weather systems running in one after another. Charlie Baker, I look very spiffy tonight, you say. Did they run me through a car wash? No, I had my hair cut. In fact, I had them all cut, and I tend to get them pretty shaved down. But thanks for the kind words nonetheless. It's my usual dark suit, purple shirt for Advent, and purple tie for Advent. All right, so let's look at our weather picture going forward. I'm going to start off, we're going to look at the surface map from earlier today with respect to the system that we're dealing with in the Northeast. And this is what happens when you have really a weak low and no true upper air support with what came in from the Midwest. We had a low up in Iowa last night. This morning it was sitting on the Canadian side of Lake Huron, east of Detroit. Bit of a warm front that extended southward, and you had a pretty hefty looking high that was building into western Maine. So that actually created a bit of a wedging of cold air down the coast into into Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and it kind of, just wedged against warmer air that was coming up from the south, but it was very weak. So the amount of precipitation that was produced by this was very weak. And in fact, as we went through the day, the low and the frontal boundary pretty much disappeared. So it was just what was left over. And by late this afternoon, we've got high pressure analyzed across Maine out into the coastal waters. A bit of cold air wedging into New York State and eastern PA, but there really isn't a whole lot of cold air here. So temperatures in some places are going to be below freezing tonight as you go north and west of the coast. There were a lot of places in northwest New Jersey, northeastern PA, and through parts of the Hudson Valley, that northwest Connecticut, that didn't get out of the 20s today. So those areas might see some slick spots, but no big deal. And then, of course, we've got this developing low in northeast Texas, the warm sector setting up in southeastern Texas and through southern Louisiana at the moment. Dew points rising up into the mid and upper 60s with temperatures into the 70s. So this is the area, the area that we saw the Storm Prediction Center with their marginal risk of severe weather. And then later on tonight, as that warm front goes northward, you're going to see that marginal risk that we showed for coastal, right near the Alabama-Mississippi border, eastward into the Florida Panhandle. The isobars are tightening here throughout Texas on the west side of the low. High pressure to the north in northeastern Colorado, developing low in northeast Texas, and that means large pressure change, relatively small distance, and you're talking some pretty strong winds. A lot of the wind barbs here on the map are showing sustained winds of 30 knots or higher, so I'm sure they're getting some pretty hefty gusts here at times in the areas where we have the high wind warnings. And in the west, we're just waiting. We've got this next round of rain getting ready to move in with low pressure off the coast that will be coming inland. And with respect to the radar, the main area of action, first off, we'll start with the northeast. And for my area, you can see what's left from the patchy rain and snow that we had today. That really is about it. Let me just freshen this up really quick and get a new view here. So this is really just pretty much winding down. Now we head down into the Midwest, down through the Mississippi Valley, and back through Texas. And the swirl you see here is where the upper low is. There's some snow going on in there in this area, and that's where we have winter weather advisories that are posted. And we're getting some heavy rain and thunderstorms east of New Orleans along the Gulf Coast. But there looks like there's the beginnings of maybe another bit of a line here that's trying to get fired up in the northwest Gulf of Mexico. So we'll keep an eye on this as it moves further to the east. If you're watching from these areas, by the way, thanks for being here, and be sure to check your local National Weather Service office for any warnings that are up with regards to severe weather by going to weather.gov and clicking on your geographic area. This radar is as of a little after 7 o'clock Eastern time. So if you're watching this on a replay, it's obviously going to be dated. And the only action in the west, waiting for the next surge of rain coming into Washington State, but it's pretty dry from Oregon southward through California. So that pretty much wraps up the short-range weather. So let's take a look at where we're going with the next couple of days. One of the things that's going on in the upper air that is making this forecast problematic is the fact that we have a split flow. And I'm going to bring up our trusty little paint box here to illustrate what's going on. So you have a wrapped up low, and you can see it on the upper air map here. And let's put this on. Make sure I didn't open this twice, which I did. So hang on one second here. All right, so you have this wrapped up upper low. I've pulled the map up for tomorrow afternoon to give you an idea of where we're going in the relative short range. Why is this storm not moving up the Appalachians and continuing its way up to the St. Lawrence Valley? Why are we not taking a deepening low to the eastern lakes or into the eastern part of the Ohio Valley and northeastward? And that is, that's the question. That's the forecast question that we're grappling with here. And the answer to that is the split flow that we have. The flow, when we say a split flow, what we mean is that we essentially have two streams, two jet streams that are separate from each other. And if they don't interact, you're going to have one set of weather systems moving along in one jet stream, and you're going to have another set of weather systems moving along in the other jet stream. If they remain separate, then you're dealing with one jet stream that is going to probably try to bring up warm tropical air. Then you're going to have another jet stream, the northern part, that's going to want to bring down colder Canadian air. And this creates issues with respect to the forecast, depending on where the boundary zones are. And it also is going to create issues with regards to tracks. So let me illustrate the split flow here. You've got this jet that comes in off the west coast, okay, and then goes through the Dakotas, rides across the northern Great Lakes, and then heads on up into eastern Canada. That is our northern jet stream. And embedded in that northern jet stream are going to be various shortwave troughs that are going to move along. The southern part of the jet stream is down here. Your air comes in off the Pacific, but the southern half, that air is then turning southeastward and around a rather deep, vigorous upper low that is sitting right here. This is the upper air system that's reflecting that surface system that we showed you. At least this is where it's going to be tomorrow. That is the upper low. Now, if the northern and southern parts of the jet stream remain separated, they're each going to basically run independently. Although the northern jet is going to have an impact on the southern part of the jet stream in that it's going to suppress this system. This system is going to want to lift up to the northeast, but it's only going to be able to get so far with that northern jet being very active. If you don't have something coming down in that northern stream, if you don't have a shortwave trough to kind of dig down and pick this system up, then you're going to have to just kind of deal with whatever it is that comes out of here as it moves on to the northeast. And in this particular instance, the two jet streams, the northern part of the jet stream is not going to phase with the southern part of the jet stream. If you were to have a phase, and I'll draw it in this darker red color so you can see it. If that northern shortwave could come down and phase with the southern shortwave, you'd have a situation with a trough that would look something like this, all right, in the dark red. So any weather system is going to, any surface low is going to want to come out of this region and then sort of head up this way in general. And it might redevelop. You might get an occluded low with a secondary low that forms at the point of occlusion. You get heavy rains that move up all the way into New England. Also, in this type of situation, the low would basically play through. It would be about 12 hours worth of rain that you'd have to contend with, and then done. But the problem is that this is exactly what we don't have. All right, we've got these two separate streams. So let's now take a look at what that means as far as the outcome of this. You're going to wind up with a surface low that's going to want to get only so far north before it turns to the east. And I'm going to take you now, we're going to go to Sunday morning. And here is what it looks like Sunday morning. That southern upper low is still quite present there, but it moves into southeastern Virginia. Okay, so it basically takes this track from, the surface low is going to try to go this way. It's going to come to a stop, and then you're going to see it redevelop somewhere off the Delmarva Peninsula or the Virginia coast. Somewhere in there, you're going to probably see some kind of low pop up. All right, but again, it remains completely separate. That this energy is completely separate from the northern stream. Now, I want to show you what's going on here because you do have a shortwave trough that is approaching the western part of the Great Lakes. Now, behind that is going to be some cold air. I'll just write the word cold here. So this shortwave trough is moving eastward. You've got the southern stream trough way ahead of it. The northern part of the jet is moving faster than the southern part. So at some point, it's possible that the north might try and phase with the south. If that happens, you could wind up with a deepening low or an intensifying low that moves just offshore and heads from off the Virginia coast to Nova Scotia and to Newfoundland, depending on where the phasing takes place. This is where timing is everything. If that northern shortwave is not deep enough, it could bypass it, or it may just stay. They may both just stay separate, where the north just basically gets just far enough south where it exerts some influence on this, and you wind up with this upper low, just kind of holding its own as a separate entity, as this trough kind of sort of digs behind it, and then picks it up and just kicks it out, punts it to the northeast like a football, like a football punter would punt the ball away. If you were to get that upper trough to be a bit faster, it's quite possible that you could see cold air coming in Sunday and Sunday night into I think parts of upstate New York and interior New England and over into Maine as this low intensifies and moves to the northeast, and you would see rain changing over to snow. I think that there's a possibility of this. The GFS kind of keeps everything pretty much separate. You see here, I'll bring the map back up now at this point. And you can see, I'll run it backwards. Let's go back a couple of frames. And you can see the upper low comes out. You see the northern shortwave now. This is Sunday morning on the map we just drew. They are separate entities. It's trying to catch up to that southern stream energy. It never really quite gets there, and it kicks it out to the northeast. The NAM this afternoon was kind of interesting because the NAM, which doesn't go out far enough, and we're going to need some models later runs to take a look at this, but the NAM's got that northern shortwave a little bit faster. It's got the southern stream shortwave a little bit slower, and they're starting to come closer together here. It almost would suggest, the NAM seems to be at least suggesting the possibility that there could be a bit of a phase. If that phase happens, it would be too late for any snow from, say, New York City south and west. But again, it might mean for some snow for areas up in New England come Sunday. So just want to put that on the table. Let's backtrack a little bit, though, because as far as the actual rain event that we're going to be seeing with this, I'm going to back it up. So there's your dying system for tonight. There probably will be a lot of clouds. You start to get this surface low, and here comes the rain up the coast. This is 1 o'clock Friday afternoon. We've got rain up through western Virginia, much of North and South Carolina, probably some thunderstorms there near the coast. And you can see that there's what looks like the beginnings of a line of storms through eastern Georgia down into the Florida Panhandle. That could be perhaps a severe weather risk for tomorrow night further east from the eastern part of the Panhandle across northern Florida, the northern part of Florida. So here's our surface low. It goes into central Kentucky, rains in New York City by Saturday morning. There's a high that's building up, again, a new high that builds north of Lake Huron. That's going to put a wall and prevent the rain from getting too far to the north here. I don't know that it'll get much further north than, say, New York City. And the NAM on this last run was barely gets it to New York City, by the way. It does get in there overnight. Then it gets suppressed southward, and we have to kind of wait for this surface low, which is still trying to go up to the west, up the Appalachians, but it's not going to make it. That high is going to hold in place. And then here's your surface low for a Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Notice there's some, the pink here is freezing rain. The NAM is suggestive of colder air kind of bleeding southward. But watch what happens, because now you're getting that northern shortwave is getting closer. So cold air is starting to get involved. At least this is what the NAM implies. And you see a changeover to snow late Sunday afternoon into Sunday night, up the Hudson Valley, into New Hampshire, southern New Hampshire, Vermont, eventually into Massachusetts and Connecticut. And we don't go out further than 1 a.m. Monday, but I imagine we'll probably carry it over a bit longer. It even has some back edge snow shower activity into northeastern Pennsylvania. This is because of how the model handles those two streams. It's faster with the northern stream, a little slower with the southern stream. So this is something that we're going to pay attention to this the next couple of runs of the NAM to see if this is just a one-run thing. The GFS was kind of showing this over a couple of days, and then it backed away from it, and it continues to not have that solution because it's keeping the two streams fairly separate. Here are the rainfall amounts on the NAM, by the way, and this is through 1 a.m. Monday. Some 2-inch amounts in the whitish areas that you see brushed into parts of southern New England, but the heavier rains are down through Delaware, the Delmarva Peninsula, parts of western Maryland, at least the way the NAM sees it. But I think WPC's, the Weather Prediction Center's map that we showed you earlier, probably is a pretty good idea of what the rainfall amounts are going to be. And I think a 1 to 2 inch rainfall from northeastern Virginia on up into southernmost southern New England seems like a pretty good bet. And there's going to be some locally higher amounts. And then as you go south through Virginia and North Carolina, you start to get into the bigger amounts. And this is where we have the flood watch. So the short-range dilemma is going to be, let's try and figure out how this all plays out through the weekend with regards to any changes in New England. And by the way, just for laughs, I'm going to bring up the NAM's snow map, and it really is just for laughs here. I'm looking at it for the first time, but it does actually get, a little bit silly bullish for the Hudson Valley and for Connecticut, for western Connecticut, and then going northward. We'll have to add a few more frames in it. So I'm going to be very curious as far as what the night run does with all of this. It may ultimately be much ado about nothing because there's no guarantee that the NAM is correct with the idea of the shortwave in the north being faster and a little deeper. The southern the southern stream feature being a little slower, where the north is kind of catching up to the south. Stranger things have happened, but definitely want to watch some model trends overnight and during the day tomorrow. If we're seeing this tomorrow at this time when we do our live stream, then you can bet that we're going to probably start to pay close attention and figure it out somewhere in our forecast. By the way, this is the 84-hour snowfall that's forecast to occur in the Northeast and also in the Northwest, and not too much going on in the middle. So let's jump to the GFS on the long range at this point, and let's talk about the overall pattern with respect to next week and beyond. The big issue with the models, the big issue with the atmosphere, that is the upper atmosphere, is the Pacific. If you notice here in the Pacific, and I'll just back it up over from this past weekend, you've got this just basically this amorphous trough or troughing throughout much of the Pacific into the West Coast and into the Pacific and into the Canadian Northwest, which is impacting the EPO, the East Pacific Oscillation. It is strongly positive. That is not conducive to cold air coming into the eastern part of the U.S. But as we go through the next week, we are going to see a couple of things. First off, while the EPO is positive, it is going to be coming down. The other thing is we do actually have a bit of a Canada connection that develops early next week because of the North Atlantic Oscillation, or the NAO, that measures how much blocking we have in the atmosphere, or don't have. But we do have a little bit of blockiness, at least enough that we actually do have a cold air connection with regards to some colder air coming into the eastern part of the U.S. For next week. There will be a couple of shots, and you can see it right here if you follow the jet stream pattern, that we are getting air coming down from northeastern Canada. Western Canada is getting air coming in from the Pacific. There's the flow is still coming in straight off the Pacific, but there's this kind of narrow jet from central Canada eastward that is sort of holding its own. This is going to keep the east from getting too warm. You're not going to be able to get a ridge to build in the eastern part of the United States because of this. So this is preventing our weather from going into what we would normally call blowtorch mode. And then just as that trough pulls out, we start to see some repair going on in the west, where you don't have that kind of amorphous look to the troughing that's in the Gulf of Alaska back to the Aleutians. It concentrates more in the Gulf of Alaska. You start to get more of a ridge that builds up into Western Canada. We are at this point on Sunday, December 23rd, which is not that far into the long range. It's about day 9. And the paint box at this point, I'll put the new map up. Hang on, let me just copy image. Make sure you guys are seeing. Yes, you do have the paint box. So let me come back to this. Get rid of that. Put the new map on. So this is our jet stream for Sunday, December 23rd. This is why I think that we still have possibilities on the table, because this is a much colder pattern that is developing toward the end of the month. Okay. Now, next weekend, if this is correct, you actually have your flow of air is coming down from northwest Canada down into the eastern part of the United States. We also actually have a little bit of an upper high building from the Azores on up into Greenland. So that's a pretty interesting development. That might lock in this double vortex that you see here in eastern Canada. We've got a ridge that pops up, that tries to pop up in the northwest. You've got various short waves coming in the southern part of the jet stream. There are enough pieces here running around that suggest to me that we will have there's a chance. I'll tell you this much. I would rather see, and has been my experience, I would much rather see the long-range maps not show any kind of storm, or if you're looking for a white Christmas, that is. I would rather the long-range maps not show hints of it and not a full-fledged event, because you know if it's a full-fledged event, the next number of runs are going to be different. Every model run times out all the different puzzle pieces, all those short waves, they all time out differently. And as a result, as you get deeper and deeper in the long range, as all these things are timing out differently, you're going to get different outcomes. But during the last several runs of the GFS, really didn't show very much. We do have in the east, as I said, we are going to be able to see a minimal amount of warming in between cold fronts. There's another one after Monday's system gets out of here. There's a cold front that approaches for Thursday night, and a low develops offshore, which is kind of interesting to me. Maybe this could wind up digging a little further south. I don't know, but that system goes out. Then you've got another system come Sunday that moves through with a cold front with a shot of colder air behind it. And here's where this late run Showed you that southern energy before on the upper air. Whoops, forgot to flip back. Sorry about that. So let me run this back again. At least I didn't go that long without it. But here are your cold fronts for next week. So here's Monday's system. Sunday night, Monday system, which the GFS doesn't do what the NAM does because that northern stream is way too late. It's not too late for Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, but it is too late for upstate New York, Western Mass, and Northern Connecticut, if this is correct. And then that goes out. We get a shot of cold air for Monday and Tuesday. We moderate a bit into Thursday ahead of the next cold front. There's that low that I told you about. That you get this low that's diving southeastward through the Great Lakes and then redevelops in our backyard. Usually we don't get anything from those because it's too, they redevelop too far north and then heads up into Nova Scotia. We moderate again going into the weekend, only to have another cold front come through Saturday night and Sunday. And this is where you start to get cold air spreading out. Here's your chance on the on today's late afternoon run with that southern stream shortwave, which it keeps to the south of New York City, but it brings snow into Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, down into North Carolina. Who knows if this is real? Again, this is because of how the model runs are timing things out. And then it's got another system as we get closer to the end of Christmas week, which it really overdevelops on this, so who knows? The bottom line is the upper air to me is, at least the upper air to me suggests that if your short waves time out in a certain way, that there's a shot for a white Christmas over parts of the Northeast and maybe even down into the Mid-Atlantic if everything is very suppressed. So I certainly would not throw in the towel. I certainly would not, as I said from the beginning, look at each individual model run and have an emotional roller coaster ride of either elation or a breakdown. The overall flavor of the pattern is what you want to focus on. There's enough there for me to say that the possibilities are on the table. And I think that, I think that there will be some more adjustments on the model runs going forward. Okay, so if you're a White Christmas fan, there's hope. Okay, there's hope. And as I just said, Green Fire 919, it doesn't matter what the model is doing. Okay, it really does not matter what the model is doing specifically at the surface. It's the upper air that's important, and the upper air suggests that there are ways where it could happen, and there's plenty of time for there's certainly time for models to adjust. I know I'm kind of speaking in the perspective of wanting a white Christmas. I'm kind of a purist from that respect. I like having experienced them. It is very, very pretty. We don't want it to get out of hand so people can't travel, obviously. All right, but I know there's this sort of rooting that goes on. It's probably the only time that I let my emotions get a little bit of the better of me with regards to White Christmas. Oh, so is my colleague here? Is Brittany Borer on? Where is she? I'm trying to find you. Did you put a comment up, Brittany? I'm not seeing you unless you disappeared already. Because a 41-minute live stream is very, very long to sit through, and oftentimes they do get longer. But let me just tell you folks at home, for those of you who watch, have FiOS One News in the New Jersey, Hudson Valley, Long Island area, my colleague Brittany Borer is on during the day. There she is. Nice to see you on board, Brittany. And she's got a YouTube channel, by the way, that you should go ahead and take a look at. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to bring it up. Brittany, if you want, put the link up on the chat board so folks can have it and subscribe to it. Here we go. I have the channel right here. And I just subscribed to it. Okay, so here you go. Here is her channel. Hang on. bring it up specifically. There you go. So here you go, folks. There's Brittany's YouTube link. So after we're done, go over there and take a look. Can't see that snow happening, Joe. It's too warm? Question mark. Robert Hurley. It doesn't take much to correct a warm condition. It's not that warm. Okay, it really isn't that warm. Even through next week, we're going to be pretty much seasonal. So that's acceptable to me. All it takes is for cold air to be there when it happens. That's all that matters. All right. It doesn't really matter too much if you don't have it 2 days before or 3 days before. So that's not that isn't the issue in my view. I think we've had more storms than I can count where temperatures were in the 50s and 60s the day before and gotten significant accumulating snows the day after. So, and we're not even going to have that. So again, approach it from the way I suggested that you approach it. Marco Brown, I'm sorry, my glasses are getting the best of me. It's Mariko Brown. Welcome to the channel. Thanks for being here. You saw a model this morning that had Atlanta in a snow zone for Christmas. Well, look, that is going to take a little bit of work to do. You're going to have to get cold air to really sort of come down. That whole northern part of the jet stream is going to have to really suppress everything southward, in which case that would be a way that it would happen. But if you don't see that, then the chances are fairly long for you to have that happen. I see that there is a request to put up the teleconnections. Okay. Hold on a second. And yet, hold on. ESRL. Open link. And image. All right, so let's take a look at the teleconnections today. The ones that are important to me, let's forget the NAO. The NAO is important only in the sense that it's going to keep things from getting too warm. I got to find. I hid my window here. Hang on a second, folks. Where is it? Oh boy. There we go. I have it hidden back here somewhere. All right. So the teleconnections is what you want. The teleconnections is what you'll get. Okay. So you've got your Pacific North America index, very strongly positive. This measures, it's a combined measure of a ridge in the west, trough in the east. Okay, and we've got it going off the wall positive, in fact, when we head into the weekend before Christmas. The NAO, which as I said, keeps us from getting too warm next week, actually goes somewhat negative, slightly to somewhat negative, back to the neutral line around the 22nd, 23rd. And the EPO, which was off the wall positive and continues, is now on a downtrend, not a straight line downtrend, but kind of a broken line downtrend, but it then gets down to zero. It gets down to neutral around the 19th, 20th, and then starts to trend negative as we go through the weekend before Christmas, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. Not strongly negative, but negative enough that it does mean for a colder pattern to perhaps start to come into the eastern part of the United States. Nothing extreme is being indicated here with regards to the amount of cold air that will return. These teleconnections, always remember that these are based on the 0Z GFS run, which is last night's GFS run. They only come out once a day. These are the ensembles, by the way. And they change every day as the models adjust. You're going to see these teleconnections adjust. So they're not a static view that stays, consistent. We could come in tomorrow and where you see the NAO negative, it might be more negative. It might be closer to neutral. It might even be positive, and maybe the late time frame is more negative. Same for the EPO. So you take that weather model snapshot and you work with it, and you start to ebb and flow when it comes to all of this. going back and forth, trying to figure out where the pattern is really going. I did see a question here. Robert Hurley, with regards to the stratospheric warming. C. Judah Cohen on Twitter, he's posted some stuff, and I have posted the link to his blog from time to time. I know it's a really tough read, but the stratospheric warming that the models are showing is very significant. And his work shows that whenever we've had stratospheric warming events like this, it has been followed by colder than normal weather in the eastern part of the United States, significantly colder weather. A complete disruption of the polar vortex seems to be getting underway. There's a lag. It's not an instantaneous thing. It doesn't, if you get the disruption of the polar vortex to happen the weekend before Christmas, it may really not show up in the short-term pattern for another couple of weeks. But it does certainly suggest that we are going to have a rather interesting, let's call it, a very interesting month of January. How it specifically evolves, I don't know. Remember, it could be cold and dry. So, Reaver, you're asking about the Madden-Julian oscillation. I have a very, very, basic understanding of what that is. What that is. It monitors tropical activity in the far western Pacific and in the Indian Ocean, and under certain conditions, that activity that goes on there, it apparently has impact on the weather downstream, which you would, actually kind of makes sense that it would have impact on the weather across the Pacific and beyond. None of us are in vacuums here. There's no part of the world weather-wise that sits in a vacuum. Everything kind of has impact on everything else. But it's that activity down there that basically sets the ball rolling. And there are certain phases. That's the part I don't really get. There are apparently 8 identifiable phases of the oscillation, the Madden-Julian oscillation of that tropical activity. And they are numbered 1 to 8, and apparently phases 8, 1, and 2 are phases where we have cold and oftentimes snowy weather in the east. We just had that phase, apparently. I think it was phase 8 during the time that we had the system for the storm in the mid-Atlantic last weekend. So that's just kind of, I get it. A lot of the long-range people pay attention to this sort of stuff, so since I'm not a long-range guy, I really don't look at it. The only time I actually even that it comes in front of me is when I'm reading something and someone happens to mention it or has written about it. That's not one of those things that I go to every single day and take a look at. Mr. Person just got here. Good place. North Carolina still seeing snow melting and flash flooding. Yes, absolutely, and that's why we covered this at the beginning today, Mr. Person. So you can go back and look at the live stream after it's done. Go back and look at the live stream from the beginning, and you'll see that we did talk about that. The snow melt plus at least a couple of inches of rain or more are going to be very, very problematic with regards to flooding, and there is going to be some flash flooding. And by the way, a number of places in coastal North Carolina, Wilmington included, for example, are going to finish the year with over 100 inches of rain. Reaver, I love your question. Am I demanded to focus on the short range? No. No, I've never been told, by the way, in all my career. Let me just clarify a few things. In my career, in every place that I've worked at, I have never been told ever to adjust a forecast for one reason or another. Okay, that just doesn't happen. At least it's never happened to me. And I've never, none of my colleagues that I know of, that just doesn't happen. The problem is that with television, like with any television station, there are time constraints. There's a limited amount of time. There's only so much we can do, as far as covering weather going forward. This is what the beauty of my YouTube channel is, because I'm here now 50, almost coming up on 50 minutes, okay? 50 minutes with regards to talking about the weather. We talked about the immediate term, the short term, the intermediate term, the long term. We looked at maps that you would never, ever see on television. Thank you for Levi Cowan for tropicaltidbits.com. Great model weather website that is absolutely free. And, go take a look if you haven't already. I know my regulars have. But, again, no one's ever said to me, you can't do this, you shouldn't do that, etc., etc. Meteorologists should be given more time on TV to explain. Well, the downside of that, Reaver, is then we won't have time to come on and do a 50-minute live stream. So, and look, the subset of those of you who are really enthusiasts enough that you love sitting through all of this, which is terrific. I mean, I think it's wonderful that you guys that you're here, and that I've always believed that there was an audience for this sort of stuff, and now I've had my opportunity to prove that, and I think I have proven that. Look, there's a place that you can go now and get this anytime, okay? And that is the upside to all of this. Thank you, Kendall Bailey. I really, really appreciate your very kind words. Izzy D, I know you went to the upper 40s. I saw that in southern New Jersey while it didn't get out of the upper 20s. We do have activity going forward to look at, as I explained, with regards to next weekend and going into Christmas. And that's where we're going to spend our time as we focus on the long range, unless we have a short range problem that comes up later this weekend, Sunday into Monday. Right now, again, just waiting to see at least, I want to see the next 3 or 4 runs of the NAM and the GFS to see how that plays out. And by the way, as we start to wrap things up tonight, I think this is probably a good time to mention the fact that if for those of you who really are, love this weather, doing all this weather stuff and looking at the upper air and the long range and the short range, I do have a subscription platform. It's just $2 a month. It's a great, easy way. It helps support what I'm doing here on YouTube, helps support what I'm doing with my free app, which will be coming out for iPhones. So this platform is on Patreon, which is my crowdfunding page. We do live streams just for Patreon members. We try to do them every day. We don't always manage to do it every day because of my own time constraints, but we do get them done. And the link is there for you. It's just $2 a month, and there's a number of folks that are on the chat board tonight on YouTube that love it. So, and I'm very thankful for that. We have 150 members so far. It's a non-troll community. There's no flat earthers there or anything like that. So consider it. You can message me anytime if you've got questions or comments, and I respond in a very timely manner. And again, thanks for those of you that are on board that have joined up. Let me just once again put up my weather app. Which, by the way, if you live outside the northern New Jersey, New York City, Long Island, Hudson Valley, southern Connecticut area, you might still like the app because I write about a lot of stuff outside of local weather. I write about the long range. I write about the short range. I talk about things that are going on in the eastern part of the United States, and it's free, so make room for it on your phone. It's for Android right now. Ben McInnes, thank you so much. By the way, I have to tell you, I get such a thrill out of the fact that I've got folks from outside the United States, from our friends up in Canada. So let me just take a look. I don't always remember to do this, so please remind me. My soon-to-be 60-year-old brain forgets. And I know, Scott, you also asked about looking at Europe, so I'm going to take a look at that. So forgive me. When you guys ask me to do stuff, I try to remember, and I don't always remember. But with this storm for Sunday night, this Sunday that develops off the East Coast and moves northeastward, I think this could be a little deeper and a little colder for Nova Scotia and for New Brunswick. So it looks like it'll be a rain to snow situation and a snow to rain situation for Newfoundland with the way the low is tracking. It does deepen down to a 976. You get cold air behind it. And then here comes one for, this will be for the weekend of the 21st, 22nd, where we've got this, I'm sorry, this is for Thursday when the system goes through the east. If it digs a little bit further south, this could wind up being something from the standpoint of snow for the end of the week and the beginning of next weekend. You've got this deepening low. Gets down to a 967. That's not too shabby as it goes west of Newfoundland. So Newfoundland winds up with mostly rain out of this, and it looks like a rain to snow situation for Nova Scotia. And there's your snow for Christmas Eve. For the 23rd into the 24th with yet another low if the long range models are right. I think the fact that you're going to get a reestablishment of this vortex in the eastern part of Canada, in the southeastern part of Canada, does bode well for opportunities for your particular area with regards to snow. Mr. Ben, okay? My birthday's not till January, by the way, so when it happens, I will definitely, I'll definitely tell you guys. So, but it's not until January. Okay. Europe. Sorry, Scott. Poor Scott, he's got his wisdom teeth pulled today. So he was at the dentist and he wanted to watch the Patreon live stream this morning for members only. And his dentist, while apparently he was a fan of mine, didn't think it was, wouldn't let him do it. Now, I say to you, is that really fair? Okay? Is that really fair? So I did notice that on the European, at least, it looks like it wanted to get colder in the long term. The GFS has a bit of a different story. There is a storm going through the Mediterranean that's bringing snow over parts of Hungary, the Czech Republic, into Austria. Not seeing too much going on over in England other than a big ocean storm there northwest of Ireland by early Saturday that sweeps some rain through much of England and Scotland, and a little bit of snow in the Highlands. And then another big storm as we go to Tuesday of next week that is well out offshore, but it does have these Atlantic storms are so big. They have such a huge influence in terms of the weather that they produce, and they do cover a vast area. But at least through next week, it doesn't appear to be overly cold on the GFS. The European actually, you start to see a colder look to this as you get out towards day 9 and 10. The European, I think, had more of a Siberian high pressing down southward into northwestern Europe in its longer term. So be interesting to see. Oftentimes when, depending on the setup, it gets cold up in that part of Europe, it gets cold in the eastern part of the United States. And the displacement of the polar vortex in the upper atmosphere that Dr. Judah Cohen is talking about may very well lead to that. So you guys got all of that. You got my links. Thanks again for being here. Joe and Joe Weather Show, my colleague Joe Rayo and I, on Facebook tonight at 9:20. So you can watch it there. If not, you'll have to wait till tomorrow morning. It'll be uploaded to the YouTube library. My app folks, they will get it tonight. And the Patreon folks will also get it tonight. But everybody else, we're going to have to wait until tomorrow. Thanks very much, everybody. It's been a fun night tonight. We've gone almost an hour. Really appreciate your patience and staying with me through all of this. And we'll